Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome General Odierno.
So this afternoon, I'd like to comment on the challenges of the global environment and the Army's role in the environment as I see it as we move towards the future. As I stand here today, we have 89,000 soldiers deployed around the world. We have 65,000 in Afghanistan. We have another 15,000 in other parts of the Middle East, as well as continuing to have a presence on the Korean Peninsula. Our Army continues to be recognized not only by our allies, but our antagonists and adversaries as the best Army in the world. And that's the challenge that we have as we move forward. We must remain the best Army in the world. We must incorporate what we have learned, what lessons we've learned. How does that project into the complex future environment that we will face, while accounting for the fiscal realities that our country faces? Moving forward, our Army's primary purpose is resolute: to fight and win our nation's wars. But the Army must be able to do much more than that. So thinking through this, I've developed 5 priorities. Priority number 1 is that the Army will remain committed to our currently 89,000 deployed soldiers. They will continue to be the best trained, best equipped, and best led land force in the world. My second priority is the continued development of the Army for the future as part of Joint Force 2020. Developing this future force will require a versatile mix of capabilities, formations, and equipment that will enable us to succeed in a full range of missions, understanding the fiscal realities. Looking ahead, I believe there are several key characteristics that are essential to any future force. We must have depth and versatility. We must be adaptive to the ever-changing state of warfare and innovative to adjust to these adaptations. We must be flexible and agile in our responsiveness, integrated and synchronized within the larger effort of the joint force. And finally, it's imperative that we remain lethal and discriminate. We are incredibly fortunate as a country to have men and women, millions of men and women, who have chosen and believe in the values and ideals that this country stands for, that are willing to fight and preserve those rights for all Americans. The Army is committed to honoring the service of every soldier, which continues for the rest of their lives, whether in uniform or not. However, it is important that we recognize that over 200,000 soldiers transition from active and reserve status to veterans every year. Many people don't realize that. We need help from all communities to give these deserving individuals the chance to bring their special qualities and skills to the civilian sector. First off, the Taliban has been rooted out of places right now that they've been in for decades upon decades, if not centuries, where they are no longer there because they've been driven out. What I learned when I was in Iraq, and I've seen the same thing in Afghanistan, is when you start to see more suicide bombers and these insider threats that you see, what you're really seeing is a more desperate enemy, because they are now resorting to terrorist tactics that they normally will not resort to. And I know sometimes that might be counterintuitive to some people. But what they can no longer do is organize a group to go against the Afghan army right now with NATO and US backing, so they are turning to terrorism. All I would say about drone strikes is, as they are delivered and conducted, the amount of intelligence and the amount of information that is gathered before one of those are done is quite significant. The decision to do that is based on what we consider to be incredibly accurate information. And this is to go after individuals that are clearly leading the efforts in Afghanistan and some other places. In some cases, if we can use drone strikes instead of putting 50,000 people on the ground, it might be worthwhile. In some cases, it might not be. And so what you have to be able to do is leave and have a variety of capabilities to use that we think is best in our nation's best interest, and meets our national security needs. I think we have to keep that door open as we continue to move forward. You know, one of the things that's always bothered me over the last 10 years is I've watched on the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan the incredible amount of humanity that is provided and conducted by U.S. soldiers, Marines, airmen, and sailors that we tend not to get, not that we want credit, but we don't, it's not recognized all the time. And I think that it's important that we continue to help the refugees in Syria as we watch this unfold. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to watch it, determine what's in our best national interests, and then provide a variety of options to the president and decide what we need to do. I think you've probably all read that July was the worst month we've had in the Army for suicides. And I will say we're the only service who actually publishes our suicide rates. So it is a problem that is becoming, has been and continues to be of great concern. We have put a lot of dollars, effort, time, brought in lots of experts. The problem is none of these follow any pattern. And in fact, the suicides that we're having are not really all related to combat. Many of them, some of the soldiers, in fact, I would say almost half of the soldiers committing suicide never have gone to combat. So for us, it's about identifying, for me, it's about leaders down to the lowest level, knowing their soldiers and understanding when they see a change in behavior so we can react to ensure that the event of suicide does not occur. PTSD is an incredibly difficult problem. And the problem is if you went to 10 doctors, they will give you 11 opinions on PTSD. Because it's difficult. It's difficult to determine what the causes are. It's difficult to determine how someone will act. And it's difficult, people can't even agree on how they should be treated. So we have to continually come up with new ways on how we deal with PTSD, because this is not going away. This is going to be with us for at least another 10, maybe 20 years. As we continue to have soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines impacted by their experiences. PTSD is curable. And it's important for us to give them the tools necessary so they can continue to contribute in a positive way. And so we continue to invest heavily in this. You know, we have a couple things. One is the stigma of first admitting you have a problem. And yes, in the military, we focus on mental and physical toughness. And so, but what we don't want is people to translate that into, I have to be careful about saying I have a problem because nobody will ever think I'm no longer mentally or physically tough. That's an issue. So the first thing we have to do is ensure that people are aware that we think it's important that they come forward when they need help. And we're actually going to be joining here with the NFL. They have the same issue with a couple other things. And we're actually to bring awareness to this issue of not being willing to come forward if you have an issue. And we're going to do that here in the next week or so. The Army is investing more money over this next cycle of budgets in order to increase our capabilities, both in people and equipment capabilities, to protect ourselves, protect our networks, military networks, and also in the future have the capability to potentially do offensive cyber operations if we so choose to use them. And so we will continue to work that very heavily over the next several years. And you asked me, and then new technologies. The Army, about 2 years ago, started a thing called the Network Integration Exercise. We did this because we could not keep up fast enough with the developments that are occurring in the civilian community in terms of networks, whether it be like iPhone technology, the speed and capability. And to us, as I mentioned earlier, information is key to us, and our ability to move information is becoming more and more critical. So we have this network integration exercise that is run every 6 months. And it's soldiers in the field. We put out soldiers in the field that actually run the exercise and are given new technologies. So what we do now is we publish requirements that we have for our networks. And any company can say, I have something we think fits that, and they come participate in this exercise. If we find it to be interoperable and capable, then we will then move into an acquisition process to integrate this. This enables us to utilize the most recent technology that's being developed on the information side. And for us, it's incredibly important because technology changes almost every year. How Iraq turns out is dependent on two things. One is, what do they do with the wealth that they get when they start selling 5 million barrels a day? Will it be distributed among the population evenly, or will it be just a few who gain the wealth? And that will determine, in my opinion, how well Iraq goes forward. Secondly, is politically. They've had 3 elections. Every one of the 3 democratic elections they've had were overseen by the United Nations and the American military. And I thought they went very well. Iraqis want to select their leaders. They want to have a democratic system. Does that system continue? So those are the 2 questions. If in 2 years from now, when they have their next election for a prime minister, if it goes forward, they have a good, honest election, and the oil continues to be developed, and they're reinvesting that into their people, I think Iraq will continue to move forward. And I think as we see everything play out in the Middle East right now, you're seeing Iraq is fairly neutral. That would not have been the case 10 years ago. So I think they're kind of heading in the right direction, but I am not going to sit here and predict that Iraq will turn out exactly right. I think they certainly have the capability to. I think we have to stay engaged politically and economically with Iraq. And I think if we do that, we increase the chances significantly.
Thank you very much for those excellent and very forthcoming answers. We appreciate it.
Thank you.